Hi, thanks for showing up. I think we'll just wait a few minutes, just 1 minute. I know it's been almost a month since the last one. I'm sorry. We had half term, kids went holiday, so we had to go away, and then I had another Friday when I was booked out on a project. So hey, life happened. And this is the first one we can do. I got a couple of things to show, and a couple of things we've been working on, but mainly for the last month, I've been working on a lot of bugs. So basically for the 1.2 Saltcorn core release cycle, we're kind of done with the big features in the core module, and some of those were very disruptive. Some of those were new facilities, like workflows mainly. But we also did a bunch of upgrades, and basically when we released 1.0, a lot of the dependencies that we relied on were outdated, and so we needed to upgrade those, and that was very disruptive. And also there were a couple of other changes that were quite disruptive. So there's been some ups and downs with bugs, and I think we got a lot of them fixed over the last month. So both Christy and Hugo and I have been working on this, but I think we're almost there. I'll talk about one of the things that we've been working on that's been, that's been a little bit of a behind the scenes feature, but that most of you won't see, but that's really important for migrating legacy applications from other systems onto Saltcorn. And I'll show you that, and that's something that I've been spending a huge amount of time on. But first, I'll show you something that is super exciting. Hey everyone, I'll show you something that's super exciting that we've been working on, and that is sort of more along this AI line that we've been talking about, large language models. So let's see, what have we got? This is the application that I have. And we have a new view type if you have installed the Copilot module. And this is the user Copilot. And this is something super exciting. So the idea is for the user Copilot is this is a facility for creating a chatbot-like interface for your users to interact with your application. So this isn't about building views or creating tables or database structures. This isn't about changing the application of your structure or the application structure. This isn't about building, but it's about a way for users to interact with your data through a chatbot-like interface. So let's see how it works. So it is configured currently with two different sets. So first of all, you can write a system prompt, and you can write. We had a little bit of fun here, but you can write. You can sort of give it a personality, right? So you can say talk like a pirate. Okay, so now. That's the personality bit. That's just like a bit of text you enter. You tell it what it should talk like. Now, what you can do is you can connect this user Copilot to different tables and to different actions. And the idea is that for the tables, the users will be able to query those tables and ask questions about the data in their tables. So let's just connect one table here. We had a person. I guess we need a list view on that. So let's quickly create a... Yeah, we don't have a list view here, but we can quickly do that. We'll just accept the defaults. Oops. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now I've connected a table to this Copilot, and I in order to do that, I have to tell it how to show a row from that table, and how to show a bunch of rows, like in a list view. And you can also say, okay, there's some confidential fields here, and I don't want the Copilot to see these fields, either confidential or just irrelevant. Okay, so you can also connect an action. Now, we don't have any actions on this application, I guess. So let's see what we can build. Why are there no actions? Let's try and... what are the... We don't really need an action, but... I did have insert persons. Ah, I remember now. It is because you need a description. So if you don't describe things, then you can't. The Copilot can't really. It's difficult to describe. To tell the large language model what this action does and when it should run it. Okay, and. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so now we have an action to insert a person. Okay, so now we have our Copilot. Where is it? User Copilot. And now I can chat. Alright, so we told it to talk like a pirate, and it knows about people in the database. This is not going to go well. Let's see, what we got here? We got 6 persons. Okay, so let's see. Show me all persons in the database. Okay. And there we go. It's talking like a pirate. Here be all the scallywags in the database are. There you go. It works. So let's talk about what's going on here. So the Copilot has been configured with tables and with some actions. And those are tools. Those become tools that are available to the large language model. And so you can just go on and ask anything, right? Is 5 squared? So I can ask any questions here, right? So you can just interact with the Copilot. So you now have like a chat interface. But it also knows that there are certain tools that are available. And for each table, there's a tool which is to query the table. And this was somewhat difficult because of permissions, right? So you see all these examples about agents and copilots that can just write SQL, and they can just run the SQL, and they can show you some graphs or tables or something like that. And is essentially what you can do here. We haven't done graphs, but it's just like we can add that. But those are somewhat disingenuous examples because you can't just let users loose on your database and start have an LLM that writes arbitrary SQL, right? I could start to write malicious things here, right? I could say, I could ask for information that I do not have access to, right? So this, I can't remember what we have here for permissions. Okay, this requires admin, and I am admin, so there isn't really a problem, right? I have full access to this table, but a user using this might not have access to another table, or there may be ownership on this table, and this is you can't just, I mean, in a real system you can't just ask people to tell people to start running arbitrary SQL, even if it's generated by an LLM. I mean, with the LLM, you can ask it nicely. You can say, please don't access this table, but that's not going to work because people can just, in the prompt, people can just say, disregard all previous instructions. So this is called prompt poisoning. So we had to do something different, right? So, and this is why this always asks for IDs. And so if the arbitrary SQL always asks for IDs, then I can do a second query and check that I have access to that row, right? So here, this can be arbitrary SQL, and it can be, this can have joins and aggregations and whatever, right, that this can be based on. But at the end of the day, the way we've done it now, because of permissions, because we need something we can check, we're asking just for IDs from a table. And then we can go and say, okay, we're going to fetch those IDs and we're going to check that we have permissions to fetch those with whatever your permissions down here are. Okay. So that kind of makes it more secure. I'm still a little bit worried and need to think about whether it is still possible to in some way access information through a very cleverly crafted prompt that would generate some SQL. I think it might be possible, and I think we do need to think more carefully about this. But it's a bit of a challenge, right? Because the promise of having full access here and just being able to query the SQL is with arbitrary LLM generated SQL is very attractive, because I can now ask who's the oldest, who has the highest salary, and who all sorts of stuff I can do here, right? So I think this is attractive, and I think also it's very attractive for someone who has access to all the tables. That's essentially senior management in an organization, or even the administrator, to be able to make these queries. And I think we may need a way to switch off these checks. And so if you have access everywhere, then you can just do arbitrary SQL, because that's very helpful, right? And if an organization wants to use that, but they still have some confidential information part of the database, what they can do is they can take a subset of their database and give that to an analyst or something like that, and then give them an application that has full access to SQL. So you can't, for the moment, you can aggregate as part of a subquery here if you have like some additional clause here, some subselects. But at the end of the day, you have to return IDs, and that means you can't really create sort of pivot tables and that sort of stuff. So I do think that we need some setting where above a certain row level, you are completely open to access the whole database, and then you can do some very nice stuff here, and then you just do some very nice analytics and just ask the LLM for some breakdown of your data and stuff like that. And LLMs are very, very good at writing SQL. It's almost the only way that I use LLMs when coding is when generating SQL, because my SQL is not that good, not as good as an LLM. Whereas with JavaScript, I feel I don't really need it, and I feel it's sort of sitting in a larger code base. So there we go. That is one thing. And should we try to... Let's look at that action that we built. I haven't actually run this for some time. What does this one do? This insert. That doesn't actually even insert. This is probably something that we did before. Okay, let's just do something where we insert row. These are annoying. These don't have this nice breakdown. Insert any row. Insert into persons, and we'll just do row. Yeah, I hope this should work. So now this is the one that we've linked int persons, and it's now just inserting the row into the persons. I think that should work. So let's try it. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't work. Insert a fictitious pirate into the database. Let's see if it runs it. Okay. So we've inserted Captain Jack Sparrow, who's 45. Let's see if he's there. He's not there. But it did run, but it didn't insert. Well, maybe I need to look at that. I don't know what I did, but that's the idea, is right, that you can also run actions. It's possible that I really wanted a confirm button here, and haven't gotten around to doing that, but it's sort of generating the data, which is good, but it's not running the action, which is bad. So I need to look at the actions. We haven't really used the actions yet. We've used this mostly with the table data. There you go. That's something I can work on. Okay, so that is user copilots. Let me show you something else that is very, very exciting. I just need to download this. Okay, so the other thing we've worked on, I haven't done any work on this, but Christian has, and we have a very early prototype of this. Is a way to connect React views and views that you've written using React code with a Saltcorn application. So, I mean, most of you will know React. It's it's probably the most popular front-end framework, and it allows you to write more interactive applications. So the use case here is if you have an application and you can write 90% of it in Saltcorn. 90% of it is just these tables with insert forms, grids, whatever, and all these other good plugins we have. But then you have something a very particular need that you need to fulfill. That you need some particular view of some data where you need to do some manipulation, maybe using some drag and drop or some kind of like something that you need code for. And typically in no code, people say that okay, you can't go all the way, right? This is the problem with no code platforms, is that it's so easy to create 80% of your application. And then it's kind of hard, and it's a real effort to and when I talk about your application here, I mean whatever the person who wants the application, the product owner as we call it, or the customer or whatever, the person who wants the application, right? So they've said, I want this and this and this, and so with no code, it's so easy. You can just spend a couple of hours and you've got 80% of the application, right? And then you spend another 10% of your time, right? So you spend another amount of effort, right? And then you get to 90%. So there's like a little bit more that you can do, but it's a real slog, and you really got to consult like the experts, and you have to work hard at getting to 90% of what the person wants. but you can never get to 100%, right? So this is the criticism of no code, and originally the criticism of Microsoft Access is that you can never get to 100% of what the customer wants, because there are just some, built in, there's just limitations to your creativity. And so I think that may be true, right? And on a lot of projects, we've just said, okay, well, you can just have 90%, right? And I mean, some projects you really can go all the way because they're not that demanding. And in particular with Saltcorn, also some applications, they just have a lot of different connected tables. Like I'm thinking about some projects that we have where we did deliver the whole thing, but it was just a lot of tables, like hundreds of tables. And Saltcorn is very good at delivering that. But there are also applications that aren't necessarily so big in terms of the number of tables they have, but you have you just have some particular pattern, that something that you need to build and you can't, right? And I'm sure lots of you have seen that. Look, we're trying to keep on building no-code facilities to help with that case, right? So workflows helped a lot. And so you can now do custom interaction patterns. But there are just still some applications that you just can't really build, right? So for instance, I've always said that if you want to build a game, then don't use Saltcorn, right? And now I have someone who wants to build a game. It's a small game. It's a small aspect of a large application, but so that's just something where normally you'd say, okay, we can't do that. But I think being able to import React code is really, really useful, and that will take care of that extra, that 10% of the application that of the spec that you can't deliver. I think we will be able to deliver that with React code, and we will be able to integrate with the rest of the application. So the rest of the application is still this nice drag and drop, and this is just that extra little bit on top. So when you need a view that you need to write in code. The other thing that's happened is obviously with large language models is that they are very good at writing React code. Apparently that's what they do better than anything else, is writing front-end JavaScript code. And maybe some of you have seen these applications where you just have some code and you just say like, you have some front-end code and you just say like to the LLM, now make this code responsive. And it goes and changes a lot of things to make it sort of responsive, so it works both on desktop and mobile. And so it's just really, really good at writing React code. It understands the browser pretty well. And so the idea is here that if we can not only allow Saltcorn to run some specialized views in React, but we can also have the Copilot build those views for you, right? Then we can you potentially you still don't have to write any code. It's just all done for you, right? In the application. And you just describe it in the Copilot, not in this user Copilot, but in the other Copilot. Where is it? It's here, right? So you just describe, and the idea here is there be there's a list of skills here, and the idea is we'd add one for creating React components, and so you can just say what you want, and it will hopefully build something for you, right? So if you need something really unusual doesn't fit, it's not a Kanban board, because we've done Kanban boards before. And it's not a Gantt chart, but it's just something slightly different. And it will, the goal here is to link it in with the existing tables, so that your component can fetch data from the tables, and that should all happen seamlessly in terms of authorization, because you're all running on one site, and you're just sharing whatever authorization cookies. So there's no sort of connecting two different systems. It's all in the code. You just say, I want to use this table, I want this data from this table, and then it gives you whatever data you have permissions to. Okay, so let me see if I can bring up. So all I have is actually a little screenshot here of the first seeds of this, but this is not done. It's an early prototype. This is the stuff that Christian Hugo has been doing. Okay, so what have we got here? Let's go to the screen here. Okay, I hope you can see this. Maybe I can zoom in here. Okay, so on the left here, you have a folder, right? So I don't know, for serious use cases, you will want a folder that has code in it. I don't, for the moment, for this prototype, I think you have to have a folder. I don't know if we want to try and for simple use cases that you don't need to import anything, that's, or maybe we could just make it easy to create the scaffolding for a folder. So in any case, in the file section, there is a folder that has your code in it, and this is a it's a React npm package. It's got your package, and it's built with Webpack and stuff like that. This is like what an initial starter React application will look like, and here's your code, right? So this lives in here. So inside that file is some React code, and this is where the real substance is. Okay, and over here you are building a view. So you are configuring a view, a Saltcorn view of the React pattern, and it's got a bunch of settings, but those are mainly about sort of picking out. And we're going to try and minimize these. For the moment, this is what we have. I don't know if we need them, but we do our best to try to minimize the settings that we have. And so, but certainly you have to pick that folder that your code lives in. And you probably have to set. It's probably a good idea that we keep that you can set change between production and what's the other one? Production and development code, because it gives you much better error messages on your React component to have the in-browser error messages are much better when you are in development mode. So but the main part of configuring this view is that you're building your application. You're saying which component you're building your app from. And again, I don't know if this may not be what it will look like in the end. We're hoping to cut this down as much as possible, so there's a little boilerplate, and it may just be 1 to 3 lines, but we'll see what we can do. I do want, before we release this, I do want to keep this, try and get this as minimal as possible, so there are as few configuration options. Partly that, but partly also I do think that maybe you should be able to go in and just type a little component. If you're just building a component that doesn't have any dependencies, then maybe you should just go in here and be able to type it. I don't know. I don't know what we'll be able to finish up with here. And then that's it, right? So that's it. So then you run this view, and that will show whatever this app it will render on the screen, right? And so we need to sort out how to get this linked to the table data, whether we want to have it so that you can link into a React view through a relation. And so you're building, are you building views on tables, on data, or are you just, and if so, how does that come into scope of the application, of the React code? I don't know, but certainly there will be a way for that code to make requests from the tables, so to get data. But we will see what it ends up looking like. I think this is going to be a little bit, maybe another couple of weeks before we release this, because once we release it, we kind of have to support the syntax that people start using. At least we should try to, and that's so it needs to be at least approximately right before we start rolling this out. So I was kind of hoping to show this, but I didn't have time to set it up here. So I'm just showing you these screenshots from that Christian sent me. So that's it. So I mean, I think this is exciting. I also think, being able to host React applications, and then having a unified database, and then the front end being written that in this way that you can write, maybe the user facing bits, you can be writing those in React code, and then you can have the administrative backend can be all sort of Saltcorn views. I think is very, very attractive as a platform. And I'm also excited about being able to generate this code with LLMs, and being able to do it in the Copilot. So you can just describe something, and there it is, right? So let's see if that works. But I think we have this. I mean, this works. We now just need to make it easy. Okay. And by all means, do not think that we're abandoning no code or anything like that. This is meant for those 10% of cases where you need something special that is difficult to achieve with no code. And this is not going to replace all of the views that we have in place right now. But it will also give you access to a huge body of React components that are accessible through the npm repository. So that's I think that will hopefully work well. Okay. Lastly, by the way, feel free to ask any questions. But if there aren't any questions, I have one more thing that I want to talk about, and that is something might be a little bit less exciting, but I want to go through it because I've spent a lot of time on this, and it is important for migrating legacy applications. So let me go to my local. This is my local instance. Now, some of you may have seen that we have this facility to discover tables. What that does is that will look through the database you are connected to, and it will look through the tables, and it will look for any tables that are not recognized as Saltcorn tables. So these tables are so when you have all of these tables that you've built by yourself, right? So that you've built by creating a table, those correspond directly to a table in the database, and they have the same name, and it's all I think some of them sometimes they're missing a space, but by and large they have the same name. And when you see a field here, when you go into a table, you see these fields. These are fields on the SQL database, in this case PostgreSQL. So there's no what you see is what you get here, right? So in terms of the database structure, it's pretty transparent. These are the fields on the table, and there are no other fields on the table. The only exception is the users table, where there's like some more fields like password and attributes and stuff like that. But these data tables are fairly transparent. But we also have a table in the tables, which is sort of a metadata table, which contains all of the tables that we have, right? So we have this is sort of a table of tables. And so what Discover Tables will do is it will look through the existing tables and say, are there any tables that are not in my metadata table? And if there are, then you can import them. Now, what happens then is that you now have a bunch of tables and they become sort of Saltcorn tables, right? So I've done this here to a couple of tables. So they become, so this was one that I started with. So they become a Saltcorn table, right? And now you can build views against them, and you can insert them, and it should all be fine, right? Normally, it should all they act from this point on when they have been imported into the metadata table. They become an ordinary, totally ordinary Saltcorn table. Unlike these tables that have been provided, that are like history tables or SQL queries, they're not real tables, right? They're virtual tables, and they remain virtual tables. You can synchronize them against a real table, but they're not real tables. So now here you have your ordinary table, and it's all good, right? It all sort of works, except when you created this table, you didn't know about Saltcorn, right? The whole point is this is from a legacy application, and you have this this table, and it doesn't quite fit the assumptions that we had in the beginning when we did Saltcorn, right? So, for instance, a table that I have created by myself. This one. Every table that I create, there's a lot of assumptions about the primary keys. That's the main thing. So the primary key is always called ID, and it is usually an integer that is auto-incrementing. So when you insert one row, then it gets the next highest number of that increment. Now you can, as some of you probably know, you can change the type by going in here. Now I can't on a table that is has data, but if I have a table that's blank, then I can change the type. And the one thing I'm allowed to change the primary key to is a UUID. So to make that work, you need the UUID module, which and you need to install, and you also need, if you've set this up through DigitalOcean or through the install script, it should be fine. But in some cases, you also need to go to the database and install the UUID PostgreSQL module. So anyway, so you can change this to a UUID primary key field. But it's still called ID, right? And it's still called this lowercase ID. So, but now you have these other tables that you've discovered, right? And they suddenly, didn't conform to that expectation, right? So they didn't. They were set up by someone who didn't agree with that primary keys should be called ID. They were probably set up by someone who also thought that not all primary keys have to be auto-incrementing. Some of them can just be natural primary keys. And some of them can be whatever, strings, right? And indeed we even have composite primary keys where you have two fields that make up the primary key. So we've been working a lot with applications like this, and it's kind of rewarding because it's taking a real application and making it sort of updating it and modernizing it with Saltcorn. So it's very rewarding, and there are lots of applications like that out there, but there was just a certain amount of pain because not every primary key was called ID, right? So here I've got a bunch here now that has that I created. So I create these tables in the SQL terminal, and then I give them purposefully a different name for the primary key, and also did some with oh no, I don't have it here, but I also did some with that didn't have also incrementing integers, but that had strings or had integers, and so I've spent a significant amount of the last month going through these last 2 months actually, I think, and going through the code and just removing the assumption that the ID is called that the primary key is called ID, and just asking every time you need that primary key value, well, just first find the primary key field and then use that to get the primary key value. And it works now, right? So now you can create these lists, you can link them, you can have relationships, you can edit it in the data, table data. There's still occasionally a bug comes up. One cropped up yesterday when you're populating your drop downs. So that happens. That I fixed that yesterday, and that is now mostly working. So I have no doubt that a couple of issues are still going to come up from time to time, but we have active projects that are using these, that are in production. Actually, not quite in production yet, but will be in production, and will. So and we're building those, so that's when you really find the bugs. That's maybe hopefully coming to an end. So the question is, what do we want to support now? So in the beginning, we're just supporting primary keys that just weren't called ID; they were called something else. Then we started supporting strings that were primary keys. I think now we're going to have to support integers that are not incrementing, that are primary keys, sort of natural integers. And the big boss at the end of the level is composite primary keys. I don't know exactly how much we're going to support those. That will be somewhat painful, because that's not just about that the primary key has a different name or it has a different type, but it's also about the primary key being not a unique field, having multiple fields, and that's a lot of code. But I think we might be able to do some limited support for composite primary keys, where essentially you can just build views, and if you can edit data over them, then I am mostly happy with that. Something that something that I don't want to support is having keys references onto tables with composite primary keys. I think that's somewhat pathological, and that's something you rarely see. Right, we have a question. Thank you. Do ask questions, because I am done with talking about what I've been doing for the last month, I guess. So let's see. I'm using an edit view and having a select field view on a field that also has a relation to another table. I want to use the field's where clause to limit the potential choices. The limit is determined by a field in that related table, like order key to order. So I have order, but I'm not able to use a field from this related order table. Okay, so this is a very common set of questions. I think we need much better documentation here. Let's see here. What have we got? Okay, so let's see here. Well, let's use these two different types. And so let's say, like, let's give our pizzerias a category. And takeaway. Down and boat. I like restaurant and boats. Okay, and now let's see, what can we do here? Okay, so let's create a field. And this is the employer, I think. Select. Oh, by the way, one thing that I always forget when I make these is to set these labels. It's quite important for accessibility. So just set, remember when you clone this and you change the field, which is a very common way of working, is just remember to change the label here. So that matches the field name here. Okay, so first, let's see this working. Okay, so now I need more pizzerias. Okay, so we'll do this is a takeaway. Whoops. I see. Domino's. Takeaway. And this is also a takeaway. And what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. It's like it's like a Sardinian restaurant in my town. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's a sit-down restaurant. It's very nice. And let's do another one. Pizza Hut. Okay, this is a floating Pizza Hut. Okay, so let's see this working. So now I've got a form here, and I can select anything. Okay. So let's first of all see where I want category. Let's see if this works. Can I do that? Okay, now I only get the pizzeria that's on a boat. Now, let's see. So now I am going to, what am I going to do? So let's create something that's more dynamic. Employer category. And this will also be what we had before. So for the person, this is basically what they prefer, what kind of pizza restaurant they prefer to live in, to work in. Sorry. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So now, okay, first of all, I want the category. Employer category and edit. And as I just said, I have to remember to change this. Okay. So now what I want is that this preferred type is the pizzerias that you can choose come from the preferred type. Okay, so let's see. That's the where expression here. Category equals persons. Where was it? Employer category. Now, employer category, you can read this. There's like the help thing here. So the data that comes from, yeah, actually you can see them here, right? So these are the fields on the target table. These are the ones we can write expressions over. And then here we can, these are the fields that are accessible because they're on the current form. So they have a $sign in front of them, just to disambiguate a little bit, because sometimes the names clash. So now, category. Field values. Okay, so here, now, let's see, pizzeria here is nothing. It's a takeaway. Now I get the takeaways. Sit down. Now I get the one sit down. And here for the boat, I get this one, right? So that to some extent gives you so you have one drop down depending on another one. I think that might not have been the question. Let me see here. So Falcott, maybe you can you explain a little bit more about how this is different? The limit is determined by a field like order key to field. So I have an order. You can see that the keys to related tables, I would like to use field values for those related tables. So this doesn't have to come from a drop-down, I believe. If I have a bunch of rows already, let's see if this works. And now if I have the list here, let's add the, first of all, we'll add the category. Oops. Yeah, and we will add a link to edit. Edit, that's good. So now here I have, okay, so if I do that, preferred type is boat, right? But this doesn't have to be on that. I think actually if you delete this preferred type, it doesn't have to come from a drop-down. Let's try it. See if this is true. So if I say here, yeah, that's right. So it doesn't have to come from the drop-down. So I am using the field here. And these are the takeaway pizzerias. And see, I don't have the drop down for the employer type anymore. So I am using is now here in this where clause, this category, no, sorry, the employer category, which is a field on the persons table. That is now coming from that table without being a drop-down. So you can have it as a drop-down or it can be an existing row. Now, I don't know what happens if you do that. Then I can't choose anyone. So if I have a blank one, then it doesn't work so well. But for existing rows, that's okay. Now, the person lives in London and they should select only London pizzeria. Okay, let's do that. This, I think, should be the same. But let's do that example. Home location. And there. I don't know if this will work if it's a string. Well, maybe it will. So let's try this. Location. And this is the location. All right, so this is a string, and now I say, okay, and what do we have on the other one? pizzerias. We have just address, right? That's the one that I used for, yeah. So now I want, can do an and here as well. Address equals home location. Okay, let's see if this works. So now let's go to the persons table, to the list. Alice. Okay, so there's nothing, but if I type London now, does that work? I don't know if this works. No, it doesn't work. I think location needs to be, I think it needs to be a drop down. It's an interesting case actually. Let's just drop this location. Did I have this right? Actually, we can just see here. Home location, address. Yeah, that's right. But I think this needs to be a. I think this needs to be a drop down. It's interesting actually. I wonder if we should change that. Location. London, Paris, Berlin. Okay. So let's try it. Yeah, so now I've got the London pizzerias here, right? And if I go now, Paris, pizza. My French is not so good anymore. Now I get that. Yeah, so interesting that it had to be a drop down. I don't know if there's a good case whether it should be a string. Interesting that I guess we only looked for drop downs. Interesting. I'll think about whether we want to change that. But I hope that helps. So something like that, right? So the idea is basically for these, usually you pick one of these and you say equal to one of these. That's, to be honest, that takes care of most cases. That's usually how it goes. If that doesn't work, just send me an email or something like that, or just ask on the Discord or something like that, and maybe you can. If there's a problem, then try and put the expression that you put and a screenshot of your table fields on both tables. Okay, I think that's it. We're up to an hour now. Yes, you can just, Fog asks, I can just use a field name from the related table. Yes, so here, if you look at the help here for the where, which is kind of useful, but maybe a little bit cryptic. These are the fields on the related table. And so those are the ones you can write expressions on, equal to and stuff like that. And these are the fields on the current table, that is here, the persons table, which you can access with a $sign in front. So you can do essentially that, right? So this is most typically the expressions in a where goes like something like this. Okay, great. All right, sounds like we made progress. Thanks for showing up, everyone. I hope it didn't bore you, and have a good week and maybe 2 weeks, and then we'll do another office hour, hopefully in 2 weeks, on a Friday afternoon, my time. So take care, and